A signature on a management contract or board resolution binds an association to its terms and binds the individual to personal liability. In Florida, these documents now create a direct path to regulatory and criminal exposure. Entering 2026, Florida law has removed the localized discretion previously enjoyed by community association boards and licensed managers. For decades, managers and boards have used pragmatic workarounds to solve daily community problems. A quick verbal approval for a repair, a flexible timeline for an owner in debt, or an expedited internal process for emergencies were shielded by their practical results. The state legislature has replaced that informality with rigid, mandatory workflows, codified across Statutes 718 for condominiums, 720 for HOAs, and 468 for community association managers. The stakes for noncompliance are severe. Operational shortcuts now trigger voided contracts, automatic removal from office, and in specific cases, third-degree felony charges. To navigate this reality, we must map 4 absolute operational boundaries established by the legislature: digital transparency, architectural rights, Estoppel liability, and financial misconduct. The margin for error is completely gone. Executing these duties to the exact letter of the law is the only remaining defense against personal and professional ruin. The legislature established digital transparency as the baseline for compliance. The explicit goal is the total elimination of hidden operations by guaranteeing unimpeded access to governance records. This compliance matrix shows exactly which communities are triggered by the statute. For condominiums, the mandate requires an official website for any association operating 25 or more units. The condominium threshold was lowered by House Bill 1021, dropping from 150 units down to 25. Full enforcement for these newly captured condominiums activates on January 1, 2026. The HOA mandate is already active. Enforced via House Bill 1203, any community with 100 or more parcels must be fully operational right now. This flow diagram maps the mandatory architecture for these platforms. Associations must utilize a 2-tiered access profile, hosted either via a dedicated website or a downloadable mobile application. Tier 1 is the public front page. This tier remains accessible to the general public and houses non-sensitive community details, physical contact directories, and general meeting announcements. Tier 2 is the protected owner portal. This is a secure, password-protected subpage entirely inaccessible to the public. Associations are legally required to issue unique private login credentials to every owner of record upon closing. Failing to maintain this architecture carries distinct penalties. Condominiums face enforcement from the BPBR, with regulatory fines reaching up to $5,000 per violation. HOAs are subject to civil litigation, where owners can sue for statutory damages of $50 per day. Failure to meet these digital architecture standards places the association in a state of continuous, actionable violation. These statutory fines create an immediate financial leak that persists until the platform is fully compliant. Let's test these strict physical boundaries with a practice drill. An owner in a gated HOA remodels their master bathroom, changing the plumbing, moving interior walls, and installing custom skylights on the roof. The Architectural Review Committee observes the exterior skylight work from the street, discovers interior work is also occurring, and issues a $500 fine because the owner failed to submit interior floor plans for ARC approval. This 3D cross-section illustrates the ARC's actual legal authority under the Invisibility Rule, found in Florida Statutes 720.3035. The interior modifications, shaded here in green, are completely exempt from board oversight. An HOA or ARC cannot regulate, require plans for, or fine an owner for interior structural or cosmetic modifications if those changes are invisible from the street, adjacent parcels, or common areas. The fine for failing to submit interior plans is void. However, the skylight breaks the physical boundary. Because the exterior frame is visible from the lot frontage, that specific element falls under ARC jurisdiction. The board may demand an application, but solely for the exterior skylight modification. The legislature applied similar rigid constraints to temporal boundaries, specifically regarding due process and fining. Consider a second drill. A board notices an owner left their trash can at the curb 12 hours after Tuesday's waste collection and immediately posts a $100 fine to the owner's ledger. This 48-hour timeline clock details the statutory restriction on waste receptacles. Under House Bill 1203, HOAs are prohibited from issuing fines for garbage cans left at the curb for less than 24 hours before or after the designated collection window. Furthermore, applying an immediate fine violates state due process mandates. Boards cannot levy any fine without first providing 14 days written notice of a hearing before an independent committee. An association's authority does not stretch infinitely across a community. It stops abruptly at the physical threshold of public visibility and operates strictly within the exact hours mandated by state clocks. The elimination of operational leeway extends directly to financial calculation risks. In our next drill, a management firm presents a service agreement to an association containing a specific clause. The association must indemnify and hold the firm harmless against any financial loss stemming from mathematical errors made by the manager on estoppel certificates. Under Florida Statute 468.4334, this provision is statutorily void. The legislature has declared any contract clause containing an estoppel hold-harmless provision for a manager to be against public policy. Florida law imposes strict liability for estoppel issuance. Once the certificate is delivered, the association is legally barred from collecting any amount exceeding the certified payoff figure from a buyer. If a manager undercalculates the balance, the firm bears direct, singular financial responsibility for that error. They cannot shift the risk back to the association. Management firms must execute these high liability documents under strict state-indexed preparation fee caps. This equation breaks down the absolute single-unit maximum a firm can charge. It allows a $299 base preparation fee, an additional $179 if the unit has past due balances in collection, and $119 if the request demands expedited delivery. The total charge cannot exceed $597. The operational deadlines are equally unforgiving. The association, or its delegated manager, has exactly 10 business days to deliver the completed estoppel certificate upon receiving a written request. Failing to meet that 10-day deadline triggers the statutory forfeiture penalty. If the clock expires before delivery, the right to charge any preparation fee is legally forfeited. Crucially, while the right to collect payment vanishes on day 11, the legal obligation to issue the document remains active. The state has made its position clear. Management firms must absorb the financial risk of their own calculation errors and bear the operational cost of missing a mandated delivery window. The final boundary addresses how minor operational conveniences have been reclassified as strict liability offenses. Consider a storm that damages an HOA clubhouse gate. To secure the property quickly, the board president drives to a hardware store and uses an association debit card, previously approved in official meeting minutes, to purchase $400 in repair supplies. It is a common misconception that majority board approval or a state of emergency grants an exemption to financial protocols. This statutory penalty matrix highlights the reality of the statute. Chapters 718 and 720 enforce a total statutory ban on the use of association debit cards for any expense, under any circumstance. The penalties for violating this ban are absolute. Using an association debit card constitutes theft. It requires the immediate, automatic removal of the offending board member from office, the declaration of a vacancy, and opens the individual to grand larceny charges. This strict liability standard applies across community finance. Accepting vendor kickbacks or bribes skips administrative warnings entirely, resulting in a third-degree felony, immediate board removal, and the permanent revocation of a CAM license. The Florida legislature has moved operational informality into the criminal code. Procedural violations, even those committed in good faith, now carry the same legal weight as intentional theft or fraud. This grid maps the interlocking reality of the 2026 mandates. The Florida legislature has successfully eliminated operational gray areas in community management. The implementation of the Invisibility doctrine, precise digital thresholds, and absolute financial bans demands an immediate, comprehensive audit of all existing management contracts and standard operating procedures. Relying on historical precedent or emergency pragmatism offers zero protection against DBPR fines, civil litigation, or criminal prosecution. The rules of community governance have been rewritten. Strict, uncompromising adherence to the statutory text is the sole remaining defense for managers and board members in Florida.